What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Modern Fatherhood Podcast. I believe this is episode 8. I believe so. I believe it's 8. Um, you guys have been awesome sending messages and interacting and doing suggestions and all the things. And it has been so great. Um, and it makes me really happy that this is actually helping some people, even though I just started it. And I hope it keeps helping people and dads and some moms. It's a really good feeling to know. I'd waited so long to actually, wow, my hand's really big. I had waited so long to actually pull the trigger on doing this, and I had waited uh, over a year. I would talked about it before that. It was originally going to be like the dad panel or something. Um, but modern fatherhood just felt better after so many years and like actually coming up with a structure for what I was going to be doing, even if it is just me sitting in my car talking while I drive. So, a lot of suggestions that I'm getting. I see a lot of anger and a lot of negativity involved. And in some of those suggestions, I completely understand why. But I hope y'all will understand that whenever I do these, I'm going to try to not let negativity or any of that creep into the episodes. And I know I'm not going to 100% succeed at that all the time, especially because of my own personal experiences. But I am going to do my best. That being said, I saw a lot of recommendations or suggestions to talk about breaking up and splitting with the mom, and or seeing the signs that they're going to split from you. And I had numerous people message me about what they should do since they're splitting up, holidays and things like that. And then I got asked a couple of different religious questions. And I am not going to talk too much about religion on this show. Um, if you want to hear about my religion, I'm on a whole podcast about it. But I say literally every episode, the most important thing about anything is the kids, and that will never change. In any situation, in any time, the kids should come first. One of the gentlemen that I was talking to was telling me about how he's an over the road driver, and he's doing that to support his family because of where they live. There's not any high enough paying jobs to keep up with the economy. And he had a CDL prior to being over the road again, but the company that he was driving for closed. He had a local job, but the company he was driving with closed, and he had to find new employment quick. And the fastest thing he could find, which good thing he did because nothing local has come up, was over the road. Over the road driving keeps you away from your family for very long periods of time. And it is not easy for any man, woman to do. And it's not easy for the family members of people that do that. But it is a solid way to provide for your family, and it does pay very well for the most part. It's it's one of those jobs where you have to sacrifice a lot. And talking to him, he resented the fact that he had to get that job in the first place because he had such a good job, but because of the economy, the place he was working for closed down, and he had worked there for 15 years. Well, he's over the road, and his mom goes to him and his wife's house where their three kids are. He's been gone for a month, and he comes home, or not he comes home, she gets to his home, and she has another man in their house, and he had like a bag of clothes in the house, and the kids were with the other grandparents, and he had no idea this was going on. And the guy that was in the house knew about him, but she had said that they were divorced or getting divorced, and she was going to keep the house, and he was going to figure something else out because he already doesn't stay there besides, a couple of days out of the month because he's an over the road driver and things like that. So now he's sitting here trying to figure out what he's supposed to do because he is now in a career where he is stuck in a truck away from his family for most of the month, and he can't he he's he's torn on what to do. In most situations, it's, oh, well, we're splitting, so you figure something out. A lot of times the man is the one having to figure out where to stay. And he didn't specify on if the house was in his name or hers, but I'm going to assume it's in both of their names since he said that they were married. So that's a marital asset. So that's going to be split in the divorce. But now he's over the road. He knows that there's another man in the house, possibly around his children. He is hostile because he had no idea. He thought they were in a happy marriage, when they were together, everything was perfect, all the things, just to find out this. So now everything's hostile and everything's his fault because he isn't home and he's always working, and he doesn't get to see his kids, and that makes him a bad dad. And he was showing me the screenshots, and it was really terrible to see. But it was also really terrible because I got so many stories that were similar to it. And he was asking me, he's like, what do you think I should do? And I said, you're gonna have to find a job that's more stable, closer to the kids. He said, well, I have a CDL and there's nothing, you know, in town. I said, then look out of town, you know, put a radius on where you might apply for and things of that nature. Because he is in an industrial location area. So I'm sure there are some jobs with CDLs or not. And I was like, you're going to have to find something closer. You're going to have to be in those kids' lives. And it was one thing for you to be over the road when y'all were together and everything was structured. But now here you are, and your entire world is flipped upside down. But not just yours, but your kids too. And now it's going to be his job again to provide a stable home and household for his kids to come to when they're with him. Because I told him, I said, the kids are going to be your priority. I was like, the house, the everything else, that's going to come down in court. I was like, if y'all have, hopefully y'all had separate bank accounts and a joint account. But most people don't do that when they get married because they think they're going to spend the rest of their life with each other. They definitely don't have a prenup. So everything's going to have to be divvied up. But I told him, I was like, now you're going to have to build a new stable life for you and your kids. And his kids are older, so it's not, it's still hard on the kids, but it's not going to be as hard as if they were younger. But any divorce or separation is going to hurt the children in some way, shape, or form. no matter how hard you try for it not to. Even though that is the goal, is for it not to affect the children. But when mom and dad are splitting up, it's going to completely change and rock their world. I I asked him, I said, you know, do you want to reconcile with her? Like, do you still love her? Um, like, do you still want to be with her? And he was telling me, she's the love of my life, and I built this life with her and created this family, but now she's had another man in our home while I'm out, selling my soul for money that I drive hours and hours to make, and I'm not home, and I'm sacrificing my life and my time and time with my children to support her and our life, just to find out I'm supporting her, but she has two lives, basically. I said, that's understandable. I said, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you shouldn't reconcile with her if that's what y'all want to do. I understand emotions are high. I do. And I asked him, when y'all are discussing everything, have y'all stopped to think about trying to work on things and figure it out? Or is it now that she doesn't want to be together at all anymore? And it seems to me, based off what me and him talked about, that is the case. Um, so basically, he was a money bag for her. He was just a blank check, and while he was providing and paying her way and doing everything for her, she was giving everything to another man. That's devastating. Absolutely devastating. And I literally I posted in a couple dad groups asking for the suggestions, and this story came up, and I probably have 20, I'd say probably 20 other stories that are very similar to this one, not with the over the road driving, but with the working. And it's depressing as hell to see. So he's looking for a job closer to home. He's going to have to establish a new life for him and his kids. And he's like, well, do I leave her the house or do we sell the house and split the profit? I said, in this economy, sell the house and split the profit. You gotta build a whole new life. You're gonna need some money for that because their savings are gonna be split and everything like that. Thankfully for him, he's not going to have to pay alimony. It looks like, so that's going to help him. I don't know how that works in his state. Um, but I asked him about alimony. He said he doesn't believe he's going to have to pay it, or he knows he's not going to have to. But regardless, I said you're going to have to build a whole new life, and that means you're going to have to figure everything out again. Like, you need to be home, you need to be near those kids. It's like you need to be present in their lives because now their lives are like roller coasters, and they're going to need their dad for stability. And that's his plan. He's me and him are talking. I'm checking on him. He's working really hard to do all those things, and I commend him for it, for pursuing and working on getting all this stuff done. But it's just, to me, it's just another example on how you can't give up or you can't just stop. You know what I mean? Life smacks you with a bag of bricks, and you have to get up and you have to keep going because you can't stop when you have people depending on you. And even if him and her are not together, he still has to provide for those three children. Even though one's about to graduate. So congratulations, dude. Uh, Proud of her. He's gonna listen to this, so he's gonna know I'm saying this, even though I already messaged it to him too. But uh, you aren't a bad dad for providing for your family the best way you could. You lost a job you had years at. Immediately, he said it was within 2 days he was sitting in a truck. So he lost his job, got fired with it, and he said there was no notice, there was nothing like that. It was they came to work one day and they were getting shut down, and that was it. There was no, hey, 2 weeks, none of that shit, because you know for a fact that they're gonna want a 2 weeks notice from you, and they're gonna say it's the proper workplace thing or all this shit, and they don't give a flying fuck about you. There ain't no 2 weeks notice for you or your bills or anything like that. They're gonna kick you to the curb and say, "Have a nice life." But the moment you don't give a 2 weeks notice, it's that's unprofessional or things like that. And personally, I think they can all get lost. Ah, somebody asked me to tell y'all what Red Bulls I'm drinking. It's the Karuba elderflower. Super good. I love it. It's my favorite. White peach is really good too, but this is definitely the one I drink the most. Anyway, as I was saying, it is just another scenario where, as a dad, and especially in cases where they are the main source of income or provider, you build this life and you sink hundreds of thousands of dollars into the life you build with your spouse or partner or whatever. You have children, you do all these things, and it could all come crashing down in a second. And it's so hard to navigate no matter what you do unless you have a prenup, which honestly, it's not a bad idea to have one, dude. I was listening to the To Be Better podcast, and he talks. They both talk about prenups, and how it's not just so cut and dry. When people think of prenups, they're just like, oh, it's ironclad. You don't get shit, blah blah blah, and that's not the way to go about it. Um, and my personal opinion, shit. But it would behoove you to have one or not get married. But uh, anyway, but here you are, and you're having to split your life in half. You're losing all the things you worked for. You're now having to figure out a new life work schedule. You're having to figure out child support. You're having to figure out visitation because now you don't see your kids every day if you're lucky enough to have a job where you do. And now you're going to court. You're spending tens of thousands of dollars because I don't know anybody that spends less than 10. Tens of thousands of dollars fighting for custody of your kids when, as a father, you should have a right to your fucking kids anyway. And it's infuriating, especially whenever I had my first son, I didn't know about legitimization. And once it came to the time for me to start doing the process, because it's a whole process to, file for custody. Whenever I went to lawyer up, he's like, well, are you legitimized? I said, what's that? He said, oh, you're going to have to go to court just to be legitimized, and she could contest it and kick you off the birth certificate. I said, oh, well, that's amazing. But no, I don't think she's going to contest it. So we'll see. And it happens to so many other dads. There are more than just one state that does the legitimization thing. And you can have a baby and sign that birth certificate, and you will have zero rights to that baby. And you have no choice in anything with that child. You have no rights to that child. You have no say in that child's life. But that mom can go to the child support court and put you on child support, even though you have zero rights to that child and it was out of your hands. And especially in the case of the dads that do want to be in those child lives, they can't because of a bitter child's mom. And this goes both ways. I did not just get messages from men. Uh, there are some women that were some in the comments, some two messaged. I believe I got two messages from women about it, and it's always the same thing where a lot of times, and this is one of the reasons why they have legitimization, which is fair. Uh, but I feel like legitimization should be talked about more, which is one of the reasons why I bring it up. But also, I was really mad because I spent a lot of money on it, and I wanted to have rights to my kid, but I had to fight just to have basic rights to my kids. Not kids, kid. Sorry, but the parents will start out being involved in stuff, and then they quit and they start being deadbeats or workless. And I steal that term from the To Be Better show with Chris. And I was in the men's group with Chris, and we talked about workless and things like that. You have these dads that, you know, when they find out they're going to be parents, it's, oh, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to do everything we need. And then they sit on their ass and they don't. Or something in their lives happens. This is whether they lose a job, have a medical condition, uh, family events. There's tons of different reasons slash excuses that these workless give. And I call them workless because it's guys and girls in some of these stories. Um, but they just refuse to work, and all the weight gets put on the other person. And they were telling me about a couple dads that were doing that and how they are the sole provider. And one of them literally came home one day, said, I quit my job. I'm going to be a stay-at-home dad. And has not gotten a job, but life doesn't stop and bills pile up. So she's having to work and pay those bills because he refuses to get a job. And he's at home taking care of the kids and stuff, but they can't live on one income. And it's so crazy to me how twisted it can get and how that could work. And a lot of times it leads to separation, which is completely understandable if you're with a workless. If you're with somebody who claims to be the provider or say they are the main source of income, even if you both work and they are, they pay the majority of the bills, or I would honestly just say even if you both work, but especially as a provider, if you are the provider of the household and you are in that role, and this is whether your spouse is a stay at home or in school for a degree or whatever, stay at home, school, working. And again, this goes both ways because there were stories where the woman's making bank and the husband wasn't. But if you lose your job, or I'll say two different things. If you get fired, it's one thing. Like if it's not something that you did, it was something out of your control. Like in this other gentleman's case, the company closed, but he stepped up and got a job 2 days later. Uh, or on the second day he was getting in the truck. But say the company closes or things like that, why are you sitting idle? Take the rest of the day, take the night, stress about it, get your emotions in check, and then the next morning wake up, put on your suit and tie for some of you, but it ain't like that here. But put on your nice polo shirt or your button-up shirt, your nice khakis and shoes or your nice boots. Update your resume and cover letter and get your ass out there and find a job. I I've talked about it before and it's infuriating to me. It's if there's something on this show that I'm going to talk about and it's going to be passionately, it's going to be about providing for your family cuz oh, why step up and say you're a provider and then not provide or fail your family so bad because you're lazy or because you're feeling sorry for yourself or things like that. And it pisses me off. And even worse, so say you get fired and it's out of your control, okay? But say you get fired and it was completely in your control and it's because of your actions you got fired. How are you going to say you're a provider but put your job and income and family's financial stability and stability at risk by making stupid choices? I feel like that's worse. And worst is what that woman was telling me about how her husband just quit his job and is now a stay-at-home dad without her consent. And that word consent is so important in all this, okay? When you're establishing your family roles, it has to be discussions. If you're stepping into a traditional role, say you are stepping into a traditional relationship, whether the woman is traditional and you're coming into it and she wants to be a traditional household, or whether you are traditional and you're getting with somebody who is not. Both parties need to consent to the roles that are going to be undertaken. That is whether that is a traditional woman who wants to take care of the house and the home and her man and eventually kids, or whether that is a man who wants a traditional spouse who to wants to be the provider and pay the bills and do the thing and she can stay at home and take care of the house and the home and him. Both parties need to consent to that and they should not be forced into that. But that also includes later on down the road, you can't just say, "Oh, I'm done being a provider. You can figure it out." That does not mean you shouldn't ask your spouse for help if you need help. If you are drowning financially, yeah, yeah, it's okay to ask her for help, whether it's her getting a job or you have a discussion because now you need to pick up a second job, but and you're willing to do that and let her stay home. If if that is the discussion you have to have, that is completely different. But that does not mean that you get to quit being the provider because woe is me. It does not mean that you can suddenly say, "Hey, I'm done doing this single income household thing. You need to go get a job." While there are situations where the single income household can no longer work due to the economy, yes. Doing it after starting a relationship with the foundation that that was how that was going to be was traditional with the blue and pink roles and with you being the provider and her being at home and you coming in a couple years down the road and saying, "Hey, plot twist, I don't want to do this traditional thing anymore. You need to go work." After she doesn't have the job history, after and that example, I believe it was 13 years or 12 years. He came home and just wasn't working anymore. But and another example, it had been a military couple, and she went into it knowing he wanted a traditional thing. And then once he got out of the military, he was like, I don't want to do this traditional stuff anymore. I want us both to work and bring equal shares to the table." And she was like, "How?" How am I supposed to do that right now? You're expecting me to just start doing this, but I have no job history for the last so many years. And I quit school because you wanted me to be a stay at home. That's not fair. And she didn't consent to that. Vice versa, if, say, she's the breadwinner and you're the stay at home husband or wife, hopefully, if you're the stay at home because she's making that much money, you've got some side hustles or you're doing something to better yourself and your family, or you're, y'all are still a family if there's two of you. But hopefully, you're not just sitting on your ass. And because if my spouse made that much money to where I could stay at home, first of all, I'll dress up in a maid outfit and clean that house. Okay. It's just like that TikTok or those Facebook reels where if your spouse made $450,000 and told you you could stay at home, what you gonna do? I'm be in that maid outfit cleaning that house. And the house is gonna be clean and she gonna have some food when she gets home. I can tell you that much. But obviously if there's kids, that's different. That shit gets stressful and crazy. Uh, but going with that TikTok joke, but consent, if someone does not consent to something, that should be the end of it. And obviously that goes for so many things. When it shouldn't have to be said that no means no. I think it's ridiculous that that's up for debate. And yes, it is up for debate. Women know what I'm talking about when I say certain individuals like to argue about consent and no meaning no and things like that. No means no, man. Get it through your fucking head. No means no. Not maybe, not eh. No means no. Women, no means no. Everybody, no means no. It's not a hard concept. That was probably one of the second or third words you learned how to fucking say, and you started irritating your parents right off the bat. Now you're irritating me because you're arguing about no means no. Fuck off. Okay? No means no. Anyway. Oh, so aggravating. I get fired up about people being workless because it's so infuriating to see. And obviously, I've posted TikTok clips about it. I've talked about it before. And yeah, anytime it gets brought up, I will probably have a tirade about it because I hate it so much. Ooh, it's just aggravating. And they make real traditional marriage because real traditional marriage values or real traditional values can be a beautiful thing. It can be, but it gets bastardized by people using the traditional marriage or traditional values, or they say, I just have traditional values, and they just use it as a mask to be abusive or to be a shithead or whatever. And it's so infuriating to see. And a lot of times when you hear someone talk about, oh, I'm in a traditional relationship, a lot of people just assume you're in an abusive relationship, which is crazy because that's not the case. And again, it all comes down to the consent of the relationship. If uh, if you are the provider of the family, you cannot give up. That's a pretty simple fact. It's not an opinion, it's a fact. You can't give up. And sorry, sorry. You can't just give up. So, ooh, fires me up. Fucking worthless. You make the good providers look bad, okay? You do. Just like the abusers and the shithead men and the people that Oh, you make real traditional values look like shit. You use it as an excuse or as a mask for your own abusive narcissistic tendencies. And that's screwed up. And a real traditional value marriage or relationship, there's going to be communication and discussions with consenting to the different roles, the different jobs, and the structure. And that is going to be a conversation that is had up front. This is not real traditional relationships don't grow into that. Okay. There's a long dating period that goes into it. There's discussions pretty early on about what they expect or what they want their lives to be or how they want to be treated and things of that nature. And their foundation is built on those values and those roles and jobs with consent to each role and job. If you listen to a couple, there's a lot of podcasts that talk about traditional relationships and marriage. I do not fall into the category of someone that is I don't know how to word it. I'm not far right. I'm not right and I'm not left. I I'm in the middle. I can pull from both sides. Uh but ooh, I got aggravated. I lost my train of thought. Fuck. I'm not somebody that leans super far right. And I'm not gonna be the guy that tells you, you know, you're in a traditional relationship. This is exactly how it's supposed to go, blah, blah, blah. That's not the case. I don't think this is a thought that I had in my head whenever I was first starting to say that stuff. But real traditional relationships are built on a solid foundation that is built over a genuinely good period of time, but they start building that foundation for that traditional relationship with the roles and the jobs and everything early on because they know what they want. They talk about it, they discuss it, they negotiate because there are going to be some roles where maybe that's just not their thing. Dishes might just not be their thing. Maybe they just really hate dishes. And they're just like, look, I will clean the kitchen, but I won't do the dishes. And he's like, okay, well, we'll have dishwashers, or we'll have a dishwasher. We can, I can load and do the dishes. Especially if it's just the two of them. There's not that many, but later on, they'll talk about it. And a lot of these relationships, they write this stuff down. They have it. They know that they are establishing their roles that they discuss, and they set those boundaries and those conditions, and it's written down. And in those traditional relationships, the man is the provider. That woman is consenting to be the stay-at-home wife or mom. That is the foundation they built that life on. That is what she consented to and agreed to. You not stepping up in your role as the provider or care not I don't like the word caretaker. You not stepping up in your role as the provider and bringer of the finances is breaking that contract and that agreement, and therefore it is going to shake and break the foundation of your relationship or marriage because she consented to giving up that part of her. Especially in a lot of cases, these women are independent, they have their own money, they have their own lives, and they are giving those things up and giving that part of herself up. I guess giving it up is the term I'm trying to use or find. I know there's a better way I could word it, but she's giving those things up and entrusting it to you to take care of. And for you to fail her in that aspect, or for you to fail your family in that aspect, because you got fired and now you won't pick yourself up by the bootstraps, or you, especially if you got fired because of what you did or because of something you caused. If that's the case, then ooh, Uber fuck you. But you, I don't know a better word than just utter failure, I guess. And I don't, I don't, I don't get it. The amount of people I had people debating on the post. I think it was one on TikTok. They debated it a little bit, and then I got some personal messages on the TikTok post, or from the TikTok post about it. And people were talking about, well, why am I going to work at McDonald's? You know, they advertise for this much, but they only pay this much. How much are you making without that job, dude? Can you tell me that? How much money you make sitting at home without a job? Zero. So yeah, they might advertise it as less, but it's a starting point. And the McDonald's is just the example from that specific TikTok, but that goes for any job. You work your way up. And I'm not saying the corporate ladder because I don't believe in that white collar shit. And I also don't know that white collar stuff. I don't understand it. The corporate life, all that stuff, count me out because I don't understand any of it. I don't. I watch Suits and White Collar. That's it. So I can't say I understand that stuff. I'm not telling you to work up the corporate ladder, but I'm saying start somewhere. If you don't have connections from your other previous job or things like that, start somewhere. And if McDonald's is where that is, or Burger King or wherever, cool. I'm not saying get that job and stop applying places or stop applying to yourself or applying to yourself, applying to other places. And I'm not telling you to stop applying yourself to finding better jobs. That's what I was trying to say. But I'm saying start somewhere and start immediately because you're in that role. You took on that responsibility, and especially if you're in a traditional role where you are the main moneymaker or the only moneymaker in a lot of cases, but if you are the main provider with the highest income, that's your role and that's your job. So go make the money. And if not for the fact that they consented and gave that part of themselves up and you're in that role now, if not for that fact, this is a scenario where I'm not even bringing the kids up yet. In the event there are kids involved too, even I don't see how you wouldn't just start immediately trying to find a job if you know you have kids to provide for. So that's a whole nother thing if you bring the kids into it. But I'm not yet. We can save that for no, they're still part of the discussion. But especially if you have kids, you have to immediately pick yourself up by the bootstraps and get your ass in gear. So I'm not saying you should if you lose your $100,000 a year job or 70 or whatever it is, you had a good paying job and your family lived off of your income alone. And say, even if your spouse has a small job where she makes, you know, a couple $100 every 2 weeks or whatever, and that's her thing, fine. You still bring in the majority of the money, dude. You are the main provider, and that is the roles that you assumed and consented to. You consented to that role when you took it. She consented to her part of the roles when she took it. Y'all talked about it and discussed it. And if you did not, you kind of screwed up there because all those things should be talked about and communicated when building the foundation of your family and your life, especially before kids are brought into the picture. If you have the luxury of planning when you're going to have kids, if you don't actively talk about these things before you have kids, y'all both fucking up. But I'm not saying lose, if you lost those jobs, you have to immediately find a job where you make the same thing. Hopefully, you have the job training, knowledge, and experience to do that. And hopefully, you're in an area where you can do that. But if you can't, every fast food restaurant's typically hiring. Every Circle K is almost hiring. Go to a Circle K, tell me if you don't see that sign that says text this number, say hiring for a job interview or to apply. Most of them are dying for second and third shift. Or landscaping companies, just regular, the blue collar work, landscaping companies, plumbing, HVAC, electricians, construction, framing. I mean, the list goes on. Roofing, any automotive shop, because people hate doing automotive work unless it's a passion. But once you start doing it for someone else, then it's kind of freaking aggravating. Uh, Transmission shops. I mean, the blue collar list goes on, you guys. There's just general laborer. Go to the union and ask if they have any apprenticeships. Start somewhere, but start immediately. Work your way back up to good money if that's what you have to do. But you can't sit idle and not work. You got to make the money. I I see people that have traditional relationships. I see people that do not. I would not say that my household is very traditional. Is my spouse a stay-at-home mom? Yes, she is. We are blessed that she can do that. Um, but we don't have the outline pink and blue jobs like I've talked about before. And she has told me before she would go back to work if we needed. And she's been very clear on the times where money is stressful. She has always said, "I can get a job if we need to." She's always offered to take that load if I ever needed. And I always say no, obviously, because one, I'm going to find a way to get us through whatever it is because I'm the provider. That's what I do. But two, because I'm gonna make it work because I'm not gonna give up. Anyway, now that that rant is over with, because I got kind of mad, and you'll probably see more of that because I get friggin' mad. But I genuinely got upset at a lot of the stories, um, from hearing y'all's stories about finding out your spouse is cheating on you and you're an over the road driver, or there was a couple military guys deployed. The spouse was cheating while he was gone. There was two of those. There was uh I lost track of exactly how many cheating stories there was about the working guy being gone and then finding out there was somebody else. Um, the women telling me their husbands came home and just quit working, or something happened and they just wouldn't work again. Them trying to figure out divorce, that's a hard one. Um, and trying to figure out how to build a life again while giving up the life they already built, that's hard. It sucks, especially because you built that life around the family you thought you were going to have if you don't already have one, or the family you do have. And the amount of times I saw people say, well, they're just not in love anymore. That's a whole nother discussion. That could be, that's a discussion for another day. Anyway, I'm on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram for the social media accounts. Eventually we'll build a Discord, or we'll have a parent dad group. Uh, dad specifically because it's a dad podcast, but um, if moms need community and they're raising young men, there will be resources available. And I'm here for you guys too. I This is called the Modern Fatherhood Podcast, but I am here for the moms too. And I'm here for the dads. I'm here for the struggling parent. And I'm here for the parents that aren't struggling because as much as I got negative stories, you guys, send me the positive ones too, dude. I want to get on here and talk about those positive things too. Um, Somebody messaged me talking about how they watched the Dad Guilt episode and they were hooked, and they said I'm just a normal guy that they're able to sit here and listen to. And I don't think it gets much more normal than you seeing me in my car, which it's not a fancy luxurious car, guys. This is my car. I drive it to and from work. That's it. It's not a fancy car. I'm not sitting in a studio. I'm just talking to you guys because this is what I can give you. But I want to hear I want to hear those good stories too. Because he said he connected with me because I'm just a down to earth dad, and we both had kids young. I believe he's 25 with a 1 year old. Um, and I'm still in my 20s, but I had my first kid at 19, and I have two more children. But I want to see those victories. One of you guys sent me a book you wrote, and I started reading it, and I'm liking it. And there's some good advice, and there's some advice that will be discussed here. I want to see, I want to hear about y'all's victories too. And I want to be able to talk about those victories. And I want to be able to talk about the steps you had to take to reach those goals and that place in life because it's a journey, especially for the young men that find out they're going to be dads super young and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. Those young men need to see the victory stories. They need to see that there is a light at the, I won't say the end of the tunnel because you're a parent forever. Uh, but there's a goal that they can reach, or that your life isn't over just because you become a parent, or we we just need some positivity, you guys. Shit. I don't want to just read the negative stories and talk about the negativity, and I don't want to sit here and get fired up over negative stuff all the time. I want to get fired up about the positive stuff too. So, anyway, social medias, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You can find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and Cap, not CapCut, Cut something. I'll post that one because I don't even remember it. Uh, the producer for the other podcast I'm on set that one up for me. Not gonna lie. Um, so anyway, follow, like, share, rate, do the whole thing. Interacting with you guys on social media. I'm gonna keep doing it to the best of my abilities. Um, and yeah, keep showing up. You're doing great. Talk to you next time.